Hi, my name is Georgian Banov, and I'll tell you right now what was it like to grow up in a communist country, atheism, communism, and how I found God in spite of this situation. And so now maybe you don't know what communism is all about. It's of course political system, but underneath it, it's a deeply religious system. It's actually a religion, official religion, part of humanism, humanistic religion. And it was created by Karl Marx, who's a Jewish guy, who had some beef with God. I don't know what was the problem. He had a chip on his shoulder. But he created this system. And if you like to know more about it, you can read his poetry, and you can Google it, and you can see how frustrated he was with God. He was a God hater. And so he says, I will hurt you by destroying the people you created. It's like almost like a Satan talking or something like weird like that. So eventually that whole philosophy and that whole thought was picked up by Lenin and Stalin and some of these leaders back in the early, in 1940 or 1930, something like that. And they found a way to actually make it happen, to actually make a revolution and get rid of all the capitalists. Capitalists was the bad guys because they abused people, they used people, that's what they were perceived at. And so they wanted to get rid of all the capitalists and establish communism. So here we grow up in this society where they, when I was born in 1948, they eliminated all all capitalists up to that point, killed many of them. My grandpas, both sides of my family, were fortunate to remain alive only because they were good toward people, and some of the people who were working for them defended them and they didn't get killed. This is the only reason they remain alive. But as I was growing up like a kid, I didn't hear nothing about my background and what was my, the story with my grandpas and what they were doing for a living, because they were capitalists and they were considered bad guys. So I grew up in this hush-hush situation where parents and adults don't say nothing to the kids, because even the smallest thing you say against communism or disagreeing with communism can get you in trouble, can get you in prison, it can get you killed. So everybody's scared to death of these communists, and they're not that many. Probably 5% of the population were communists, and they were the ones with the guns, and they were the ones who didn't mind killing people and establish their authority with fear of death. So as I was growing up, of course, I come from a violin background. My father was a beautiful violinist. Actually, he did serenading for, back then when you propose, you want to say, ask your girl to marry you, you bring a violinist. And he plays the violin, and you say, would you marry me? And she says yes or no, Hopefully yes. My father was known to make the girls cry. He was such a beautiful serenader, so romantic. They always like, oh yes, I'll marry you, So when Mom fell in love with him because of his violin and all that romanticness, but then eventually he stopped playing the violin and became, his father was a banker, so he wanted to train him for that. So Mom and Dad just didn't make it. I mean, when I was 5, they began to fight, and finally at 6, they separated completely. Right around the time I started playing my violin, it was a broken situation. I never saw my dad until later, when Mom had an unfortunate, terrible accident with the president of the country. The communist president hit her with his car, broke her back, and so she was in a full cast for 6 months, and I lived with Daddy. And it was the funnest time of my life because I had finally a dad, and he was a cool guy, and I really loved him. But that lasted only 6 short months. So anyways, generally I just grew up with Mom, single mom, and she worked hard to make a living and make ends meet. And communists are it's a poor regime. Primarily, they got the money. Everybody else is just struggling. So we didn't have a house or apartment. So we moved from place to place. Every 6 months or a year, moved to another place. And if I describe to you some of the places I lived, but you wouldn't believe it. But like in a 2-bedroom house, we'll have like 5 families. One family, 1 bedroom, the other family, the other bedroom, living room, another family, even in the kitchen will be somebody else. So it's like a really poor situation where you live in that kind of a place, but it's the way to live. And so I was growing up playing the violin, and growing up with the communist ideas in school. They train you what to do. Like, I'm a left-hander. Well, communist says you can't be left-hander. So I learned how to do the right hand because the communists don't like that. And so they tell you everything that they don't like, and they got their own history. Books altered the way they want. Like, for instance, I didn't know that America was involved in World War II, except maybe as medics, because that's how we perceive this. This is the only way we saw Americans in a way of the Red Cross or something that they involved in medics. Everything was Russian. The Russian army, the powerful Russian army, they defeated Hitler, Russia. So when I came to America and I saw war movies from the World War II, and I saw Americans fighting, go, what is Americans doing fighting Hitler? They go, well, we were involved in the war. I go, I didn't know that. So it's just a little thing about how they twist